Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Thank you for braving the weather and braving the parking. We are so happy to have you here for this special screening of Joy. At this time, please join me in welcoming some of the powerful women and men, both in front of and behind the camera. First, I want to introduce an actress known for her work on Law & Order and Stalker. She is a SAG Award winner as a member of the American Hustle Ensemble. Please welcome Elisabeth Rohm. Also joining us is an actor who probably first came to prominence for most people with his César Award-winning turn in Carlos. He has, of course, appeared in everything from Zero Dark 30 to Che, and he plays the world's best ex-husband in Joy. Please welcome Edgar Ramirez. Now, this person, the guard at the gate, was super excited about, as am I. She is, of course, an Independent Spirit Award-winning icon. She is also an Emmy and Golden Globe nominee. Please welcome Isabella Rossellini. We have a remarkable, fantastic actress. She, of course, received an Oscar nomination and won a SAG Award as a member of the Sideways Ensemble. Please welcome Virginia Madsen. Also joining us is an actress. She's been so remarkable. She's a 3-time Oscar nominee for roles in films like Rambling Rose, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Wild at Heart. I mean, talk about 3 completely different performances. She is, of course, the narrator and also the heart of Joy. Please welcome Diane Ladd. Finally, we have the writer and director who put together this amazing ensemble. He is, of course, a 5-time Academy Award nominee for his work on The Fighter, Silver Linings Playbook, and American Hustle. And those 3 movies combined have a total of 25 Oscar nominations. Please welcome David O. Russell. I was like, I'm the only jerk sitting. I'm sorry, but it's hard to get in these chairs, and then you don't want to get out. Thank you guys so much for being here. Congratulations on a great movie. I always like to start by asking, because I know this is mostly an audience of SAG actors, how did you get your SAG card? All the actors. And unless, David, do you have a SAG card? Make them go in order. Okay, let's start with Elisabeth.
I did an episode of Fantasy Island in Hawaii.
Nice.
So I actually became a SAG member in Hawaii first.
Wow. Wait, were you
totally random?
Were you living in Hawaii, or you filmed?
No, I just did this episode of Fantasy Island. It was like my first job out of college or something. So yeah, so Hawaii is very special to me in my heart.
I got my SAG card here in Los Angeles when I did Domino, my first American film with my late friend Tony Scott. Yeah, that was my first break here in America.
I remember seeing that movie in this very theater.
Yeah, I know you. You and I know each other, right?
Shh, yeah. Edgar.
Yeah. You know you do.
Isabella?
I got my card when I was working as a model, and I did a lot of commercial, and then I did Blue Velvet, and then I got it.
Blue Velvet, was your first movie?
I did a film before called White Nights, but it was a commercial, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. I thought that was like a performance someone delivers after like 20 years of acting.
That's my second film.
Amazing. It's just that easy, everyone.
Oh, sorry. I got my SAG card. I got Taft-Hartley for a commercial, and my first speaking role was, "Come to Bob Evans now, and we'll give you free refills on coffee." Thank you.
I was stunned when you asked that question. After about 55 years in this industry, I can't hardly remember. But I do believe it was a Naked City television show, a half hour, maybe it was an hour, I don't know, with James Franciscus in New York. And I was jumped up and down and screamed when I finally got the part.
It's amazing. Sure. And David, I don't know if you're SAG or not, because you have acted. I know you acted in your friend Spike Jonze's film, and your son is an actor.
Yes, I have family members who are in SAG, but I think I haven't acted since adaptation, so I might have lost my membership.
Oh, you won't get the screener.
Waiting for Spike to ask me again.
Because you know, if you're paid up on your dues, you get great screeners. Yeah. So I want to start at the very beginning with Joy. David, I know you've said before that you like to write and make a film. In order to do so, you have to be inspired by passion and very specific people. So what compelled you to want to tell this story specifically with all these very specific characters?
Well, you know, I was excited to make my first film really principally about a woman and other women and the men who are part of their lives. So that was a big, exciting thing for me that we've been working up to. Starting with The Fighter, I felt that women had become very essential inspiration in the cinema that I was making, with the mother and the seven sisters in that picture, and then, you know, Jennifer and Jackie Weaver in Silver Linings, and then in American Hustle, Amy Adams, you know, and Jennifer and more, Elisabeth. So this picture, you know, was a very, and I saw, they're all, this, people are just amazing. You start hearing the true story of Joy, and about half of it inspires the picture. You know, it's just, you know, I don't know where to begin. I mean, it's all the crazy stuff is true. You know, so that, you know, because fiction is stranger than truth, because fiction actually has to make, the other way around, truth is stranger than fiction, because fiction has to make sense. So, you know, it's just phenomenal. I don't know where to begin. I mean, I felt that this woman, I loved that Jennifer was playing someone who wasn't crazy for once, that everybody around her was crazy, and I just love that she had so many different women's voices in her life. She had her grandmother, which is in real life was a very strong, quiet presence, and that amazing phrase I've held on to since a friend of mine was ordained as a rabbi, and the old guy said, "Are you prepared to do this and that and do that?" And he said, "Are you prepared to be the unanxious presence in the room?" And those words just knocked me over. I was knocked over already that my friend was becoming a rabbi. He was a hockey player, and so. Anyway, those are the words she says, and that's what she is, and that's what Joy becomes, and how Joy was born. And I know from The Fighter, siblings who want to be part of things, and they see magic, and they like it, but they feel left out, and that was how I wrote for Elisabeth, you know, that character, which I think is someone I can relate to, and many people can relate to. And Edgar, as you know, in real life, he is the best, and the guy is he works for her, the man enough to support her and work for her and let her be his boss. That takes a strong man. And he started out as the dreamer in the story, the singer, which I thought was cool. And you know, and then he became having to support her, and getting this gothic anti-hero was the girlfriend who made it all possible. I was going down the line. The girlfriend, you know, how do you do a thing in your kitchen? Start a business. You know, you got your father. She said, "Don't get me started. I'm going to talk too much." So that, I mean, the whole thing was crazy. There was a 900 number. I said, "What's that?" She said, "That's a dating service." I said, "Are you kidding me?" And so he was a romantic who fell in love with this. I made her an Italian woman because I wanted to work with her forever. And I wanted to work with him since Carlos, and I wanted to work with her since forever. And who knew that the woman known as a vixen had this librarian living inside of her of soap operas? But she's got a woman of many faces. And I love that Virginia played against type, and Virginia turned out to know all the plot lines of those soaps and told me those plot lines. And she was most excited when Susan Lucci and all those people were on set. She was hovering around them, and she was starstruck. And she told me the story of the Duke, how somebody got kidnapped and then fell in love with the abductor, then married him. That was all from her. That happened on Days of Our Lives. I said, okay, that's going to go in the movie. And Diane Ladd has been a hero of mine since forever. And there's a great karmic link here that, you know, Diane was nominated for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, which I think is an ancestor of this movie, as a movie about women, independent women making it, which Martin Scorsese made, his one movie really about women. And this woman later married him, but her mother and divorced him, and is a well-divorced friend. And Diane lost to her mother the year of Alice Doesn't, to Ingrid Bergman, who was being welcomed back for having been ostracized for having married her father, who was a married man. That's the end of that story.
You should make that movie. That's amazing. And for the actors, I mean, what is it like? I don't know if it's a call, if it's an audition process, to know that you're going to be working on a David O. Russell film. What is it like to be a member of this international ensemble?
Well, first of all, I want to say that, in my humble opinion, I think this is one of Mr. Russell's most important films. And the reason I say that is because I've been terribly concerned about the times that we're living in right now. And I find that a lot of human beings, especially the younger generation, has lost hope. They've lost that thing to fight for themselves. And I think David is giving that back to people on Christmas Day, one of the greatest gifts he could give. I was lucky. My father was we were middle class. We weren't certainly, God knows, rich. And he helped farmers. He helped farmers. He was a veterinarian. And he helped treat cows and pigs and hogs and dogs and help people who had no money. And he was a hero.
In the state of?
Mississippi.
Which is spelled?
M-I, crooked letter, I, crooked letter, I, humpback, I. You know, I think that's how I got this job. I met David at Colleen's party, and he said, I said, I'm from Mississippi. I said, do you know how to spell Mississippi? He said, sure I do, M-I-S. I said, mm-mm. And I spelled it. We kind of became friends at that moment. But it's true that people, my father said, Diane, don't ever forget, you can do any by God thing that you put your mind to in this world, as long as you're willing to work hard enough that God will allow you to do. If God wants you to do something, don't you ever give up. You get out there, child, and you do it. And I think we have to bring that back. And I think that's what David Russell does in this film. And that's why I'm so privileged.
This is the mighty, mighty woman we had on our set. And she is this person. And she was there, and we felt her every day. And so that we had all these energies on the set. Go Virginia.
Virginia, so were you a soap opera fan? Was that
very much so?
You can admit it. We're amongst
you said
friends.
For 11 years. Why did you say 11 years?
No, it was like more than 20 years. I started watching when I was 11. And because I had a broken arm and I was home from school and my sister wouldn't let me watch cartoons. And I became hopelessly addicted to every soap opera on television, in particular All My Children, starring Susan Lucci, who is Danica. Erica Kane, Danica. The power of Danica. So I was seriously obsessed with her, and I couldn't speak, and my voice went up like 3 octaves. Because those people, those melodramas, those Greek tragedies, those love stories they were a part of our sort of the American fabric in a way for many, many people, even when, you know, you went to school, even when I was in acting school, because they were fascinating to me. And just the fact that he was bringing that into a story, not really to make fun of it, but to see how it sort of mirrors our lives in a very sort of perverse and strange way. So yes, it was my incessant chattering to David about all the different plot lines that Susan Lucci had gone through that allowed him to graciously listen to me and then put some of it into the movie.
Well, both Jennifer and I were very into the notion of a woman who was very quiet. Her mother, Joy's real mother, was very quiet and retired from the world. And a woman who could not herself be strong, but who was inspired by strong women in a story. We thought that was cool. And that was all part of the 10-year-old psyche. That was my thoughts as a writer and a director. What makes up this little girl's mind? She's born with magic. We're all born with magic. And sometimes you get jobs, you get into a life, and what happened to it? You can hardly remember when you would play records or make things that felt magical to you. The world is very magical to children. You know, I have a 4-year-old now, and I have a 21-year-old, and I see what happens, you know, as you come into the world. And I just think that was the question I was asking. And what was in her psyche was a metal garage and her soap operas and this woman, and then comes this lady.
Wait, I can't miss this karmatic moment, because I'm not sure that Virginia knows or not, but after doing the play with Bob De Niro in New York when we got caught in a strike, I decided to be a good wife and stay in New York, and I took a soap opera, And for a year, I starred in Secret Storm.
Yes, I know.
That was originally, until the producer saw one day that it was called The Storm Within, brought to you by X-Lax. True story. And they changed it to Secret Storm.
And I changed it to The Private Storm of Emily Rockman. That's what I called it. And both she and Diane Ladd were really in the one that inspired me. And you can see it on YouTube. It's this crazy black and white soap opera.
Circles of Our Lives.
Let's not digress. And Isabella got to come in and play the exotic girlfriend of Robert, who was her best man at her wedding.
Yeah. You guys have such great chemistry. I don't know if that's because, you know, you knew each other beforehand, or the scene in the car, the oh wow scene.
That scene is like
one
a
of my
master
favorite
class
moments.
in acting. Wasn't that amazing, the two of them together?
Yeah.
Well, Bob was, thank you. Bob was a witness at my wedding with Marty Scorsese, so we've known each other for a long time. But then, as you said, we divorced with Marty. So I saw Bob occasionally. So I had a lot of trepidation to play his girlfriend. I wondered what Marty thought. And if I would get the role, you know, I thought, David, does he know the story 30 years ago? They might say, what? But there I was. I got the part. And then I saw Marty, and he said, oh, I know, you made, how's Bob? I know you worked with him. I was completely surprised. It was nothing. I made a tempest in my head, but they were completely fine, relaxed.
Were you nervous on set with, everyone calls him Bob, but I'm sorry, I have to call him Mr. De Niro.
I was nervous before.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, by the time we get to the set, we had already spent a lot of time together, and we read the script, and we rehearsed some of the scenes. So by then I was okay. I could hold his hand. I could do all these things that are, you know, to pretend he was my boyfriend.
Speaking of ex-husbands, something that I love in this movie that I don't know that I've seen before is an ex-husband and an ex-wife who get along so well, who are in a weird way maybe not meant to be married, but are sort of soulmates. I mean, was that something that attracted you to the script, or also the opportunity to sing? Thank you.
What was the first question? I'm kidding. Yeah, true love does exist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that perpetual, eternal, unconditional love does exist, and David put it in the film. Because in the end, were they meant not to be a couple in a romantic way? Probably, but they were meant to love each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that that we, as you said, we don't see very often in movies. I don't recall a film recently that portrays love in that way, a love that has the opportunity to transform, to morph, to elevate in a way. And yeah, I was telling David and I had been discussing all these days, you know, after, you know, we all saw the film, and then we started to exchange opinions, and I'm really grateful to him and to all these women and the experience, because I think I got to play so far in my career what I think it's the bravest character I've ever played, which is a man who, without reservations, without any hesitation, without any social complex of any kind, is willing to love his woman, and to love and to support and to respect and to celebrate the strength of the woman he loves and the mother of his children. And that is something that I think speaks it's pure zeitgeist. I think that the discussion is right there. It's a very difficult world for women. We don't get as men to get a grasp of how difficult it is for women to just be in this world. There are so many things that are just granted to us just because we're guys, and of course you can make the exercise of being sensitive enough. I try to do that as a you know a hardcore feminist myself, and yeah, because feminism is nothing but equality. That's what you're looking for. It's equality. There's no feminism. Yeah, it helps us. It helps everyone. It helps men, actually. I mean, actually, it takes a lot of stigmas out of men as well. So it's has nothing to do with hate. It's actually the contrary. And I think that it's in a beautiful, touching, and entertaining and moving story. Then we got the opportunity to to touch a subject that is so important right now. So I feel very grateful. Yeah, thank you. And today's Diane's birthday.
Oh,
by the way.
I think actually David wanted to say something about that.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Surprise. We can circle back to that. We can just keep celebrating it. That's okay.
And how nice of you to spend your birthday with us. We so appreciate that.
Thank you. My privilege and my pleasure.
Oh. I actually had one audience question that I thought was really interesting I wanted to ask. Lauren Simon had a question about how do you find the wonderful balance you achieve in your films between serious educational, cultural aspects and comedy? All these, different genres mixed together and making them all work. Yeah, no, we'll get back.
She's a fiercely fair woman. I think we got to defer to the lady. This lady. Do you want to say something?
I have a lot to say. Well, no, I've had the privilege of doing 2 movies with David, so and they're really such different characters. But I just want to say something about Joy that sort of underscores what Diane said. And that's that in this movie, when I first saw it a couple of days ago, I said to David, I said, you've done this thing that I don't know how you did it, but you captured childhood wonder like lightning in a bottle in this movie, like this thing we can access, this source that we can access and see in the movie where we can go back to who we were before things happened to us. That place that we go back to before life happened to us. And that's what happens to her. Is that she's able to access this source and this magic through her relationship with Diane and through herself, what's in her own soul. But I think it's so important, especially for us, single mothers. We did a lot of talking today about our mothers, me and Virginia and Diane, and talking about being raised by single mothers. And I think, David's always had this ability to portray women in a sort of incredibly honest, so I don't know how he does it to excavate the female soul, but what he's done here with Joy, I think especially as a single mother myself, and that how you're picking yourself up time and time again and wiping the dust off your knees, and he's really done that with Jennifer, and so I'm so grateful, like you're saying, to be in this movie, to do another movie with him.
Speaking of... No, it's fine.
Before, I just didn't want anybody.
We just changed the flow. It's fine. We improvise here. I know, obviously, Jennifer is not here. I know she was with you in New York last night talking about the role, but...
she's making a movie this week.
Wow. But I want to talk about the achievement of having Jennifer play this character at so many different ages, so many different points in her life, and how did you specifically differentiate each time period?
That's one of the things that made it, for me to come back to my same people and make it worth I feel I have to audition for them. I feel I have to make it worth their time. It has to be exciting. It has to be something we've never done before. So that includes Bradley. I've never seen him like that. I've never seen a relationship like what Edgar had. I've never seen Jennifer be grounded in this way and grow into her power in this way quietly, and get to see her be 18 when she was like an ingenue. That was so interesting that night between the two of you. She uses everything. She was ill. The Boston winter took it. We all got sick, and it was like the record snowfall in 80 years, and we were shut down for numerous days. And fortunately, the child in me loved the snow and put it and wanted it all over the movie. I think the grown-ups were not so fond of it, but it made her more vulnerable. Being sick makes you more vulnerable. You feel like a child. You regress. So there she was that day, sort of white as a sheet, meeting Edgar at that college party, and she seemed smaller and younger and softer. She just used it, and that was kind of cool. And then when she was married, that's a true story. Her father said that to her going down the aisle, and he was right. You can say he was mean, but he was right. And and so she was just seeing her like at the wedding, have that joy at the wedding, which we shot in 16 millimeter, like I was a 24, 22-year-old woman. It was kind of beautiful to see that, you know, and then you could feel it in the air. And it was a white wedding. I just thought it was very beautiful. And then to see her in a marriage that was, you could see one scene and feel like, wow, that is really hard. You know, and I've been there, and I've been divorced, and I've been with a baby in the arms, and it is, man, you know, it's not what you thought of in the brochure. You know, you thought, and God bless anybody who goes through that and stays loving and, you know, takes care of their kids. And so Joy lived through that. Jennifer did that with Edgar. And then there she is with him in the basement. I like that we meet him in the basement before we see all the falling in love stuff. You know, as a filmmaker, I'm trying to do stuff in a different way. And it is true that these men lived in her basement, and it's true that they hated each other. And that stuff's just too good for me to pass up as a writer. And yeah.
And what is it like to continue to come up with new things for these actors to do who you've worked with before? You know, like you're saying, and honestly, I don't know.
Even get to where she's 40. By the end of the film, right, she's 27. She goes, it's really true. You die 1,000 deaths if you want to undertake a project. And if there's money involved, people are going to try to take it away from you, right? And we certainly know that's true in Hollywood, and it's certainly true outside of Hollywood. So she went through all those deaths. And she really did go to Dallas, and that really happened. And she really did have that death in California and was pronounced dead, her business. So that inspired me. I find it inspiring, you know, when people do that. So for her, and then to see her physicality, she was so exhausted. She'd never carried a movie on her back without a bow and arrow. It was just her. It was just her heart. And so it really, she felt it every day. She usually comes in like the wingman and like steals half the movie, you know. That's her. That's what she's like, the renegade. And so this picture, she was like the oak at the center of it, who her grandmother was saying, you're going to fill these shoes. And she's like, I don't think so. You know, and that's a beautiful kind of faith. So watching her do that, by the end of the movie, she was exhausted. And then she used that in her body language. When she sat in that white coat she had on, her whole body language just sank, and it felt like old, like me. So that was cool to watch with her, and to watch her use all of that. She just kind of acts by instinct, and it's all new to her. And singing is terrifying to her. And I love hearing her actual voice when she's singing. It's so sweet with the two of you in the snow. And that was the only day I ever shot a scene ever in my 20 years as a filmmaker. When the snow was coming down, there were grips coming up to me going, man, this is really beautiful. And I said, what, are you kidding me? And the grips you could feel it on the set when they were singing in the snow in that play they did. So that's Jennifer, and I don't know, Edgar also played across those ages. For Bradley, I watched Jennifer and Bradley become grown-ups in the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, Bradley had a boyishness when we did Silver Linings that has kind of gone. You know, he bought a book called American Sniper. He produced it. He got Clint Eastwood to direct it. It's a very powerful film for many people in this country. Veterans came up to him today when I was with him and said, thank you for making that film. Veterans come up to him everywhere. And that's just anyway, he did all that, and he became a man. And that we said, this guy's a man, and he kind of had some Clint Eastwood in him. And I love that the guy who's running a new cable station in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, came up like my dad, a salesman, an honest guy from Detroit, who went up every tier of the ladder to manage all the stores, from sales to buyer to store, and then comes to this thing, and it's like his studio. And you can laugh at it. He's not laughing at it. You know, it's like, you know, like I remember when Arnold Schwarzenegger, I always think of him as like a great example in the sense of when he came to America, his name was a joke, his occupation was a joke, and his accent was a joke. But you could not shame that man, obviously, as he showed us later, which was bad. But you could not shame him. A two-term governor, because he believed in himself. So the fact that this salesman believed in his station like a studio head would, that was exciting to us. And Bradley's becoming a filmmaker. So it makes sense that, you know, he's going to be doing the hair and every attention, every detail, and juggling the personalities. Of course the spokesmodels have egos, and of course it's like a miniature universe. So and Bradley Cooper's mother turned out to be the one who obsessively watched QVC, knew the name of every spokesmodel. And I've known her for 5 years, and I said, Gloria, she said, well, Kathy was my favorite, you know, because Kathy, and so Drina De Niro plays this lady based on Kathy. We called her Cindy, and she's like a dead ringer for her. And she said how she stayed up all night, and they were her comfort. And there was nothing else at that time before the internet, you know, and that box would come. Bradley said how exciting it was, which we all take for granted now. Anyway, that's Bradley, and I think I don't know.
Well, I'm actually curious, in addition to the talent we have on stage today, I mean, this is a very flawless ensemble. You have some great people who I think you found locally. The young actors in this movie are really fantastic. The girl who plays young Joy, the girl who plays her daughter. And I know, again, because we do have so many actors here, what is the secret to the casting process? I mean, what do you hope for when someone walks in that room?
We did quite a bit of it, and we got to do it, with some of the people up on this stage, And I said I'm going to do the trance thing with Virginia, and Jennifer said I want to watch the trance thing, and she said I want you to do the trance thing. What that is for me is I guess it's like a Meisner thing. I just want the person to surrender, and say what I'm saying and do what I'm doing. And Virginia did that, and something happens. Something always happens. Something you don't expect happens, and Virginia started crying and told us about a time she had a moment with her son, who was a little boy. Do you remember this? Do you remember? Am I embarrassing you? I'm not going to say it was very beautiful. It was very honest. And you said there was a moment, as a parent that had been very difficult for you. And me and Jennifer were just with our jaws on the floor. This thing had happened, in this audition. And that's just powerful. That meant you understood what it was to be a mother. And I don't know. It just was like, it's a very, don't come in too rigid is my thing. People, I don't like when people are like De Niro says, bedroom perfect. Well then we're not in the bedroom now, we're here. And this is going to be, bring your artillery, but be ready to play. And that's why I love, Jennifer, whenever she steps in, all these actors, when they step onto the court, they're ready to play whatever is going to happen, even though they trust the voice that's inside them, and the character as they feel it from instinct. So that's important to me in audition. People, and I tell any actor, I say, offer the director 4 ways, and then ask him whatever else he wants, and show him how fearless you are, and do it 4 or 5 ways, and it'll knock him out and give him ideas. And that, yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a great process, and I know that actors can probably vouch that. Auditioning is a weird, foreign process and a completely different skill from acting in many ways. So can you tell us more about what you call this trance experience?
Just stop right there.
Okay.
It's like the Meisner. Anybody here knows the Meisner technique? It's like Sanford Meisner. I mean, it's just you're just going to repeat what I say, and you're going to start to become this other person through the process of. I have the voice in my head as a writer, and I'm going to give it to you. And then you're going to start doing it. And that's going to become something else. So it's a matter of trust, really. And the young actors, what I did with them, these little girls would come in, and I would say to them, here's a funny story. I would say, listen, there's going to be some fighting parents in the scenes, and are they okay with that? And the mother of Madsen Wolfe, who played young Peggy, said, well, in the season finale of True Detective, she was sacrificed in a cave. I said, okay, so the arguing parent thing's not such a big deal. Yeah. Okay, but just to make them comfortable, I had this whole thing that I did many times with the paper thing, which was a thing from my childhood with the record and the thing. So that's magic. You go to your room and that's it. You can go there and escape anything from outside. And so I had these paper things that I made, and I had the girls on a table, and I would show them how I wanted them to do it, and I could see them being nervous. And then I would say, okay, how about you direct me? You're the boss. You tell me how to do it. These 10-year-old girls, they'd be like, really, for real? Yeah, you just tell me, I'm going to do whatever you tell me. And then I'd be down on the floor, and they would direct me. And that's the same as when, Mark Wahlberg or anybody says to me, I'm not going to do it till you dance or you cry. And so then I would cry or dance in front of everybody on set, and I'd show that I wasn't afraid to make a fool of myself, and then they'd go, okay, now I'm going to do it. So the girls would watch, they directed me, and then what happens is the actor in them takes over. They're like, get out of there, let me do this. What are you doing? Hold on, I can do that better. I'm like, good, that's what we want. So they come in, like any actor here is like, let me do that. I'm like, good, yeah, let you do that, you do that.
And I know you talked at length with the real Joy, and then you met her, but I believe it was after you had written the script. Yes. Did that change anything? And were any of you Were any of you able to meet your real life counterparts? Were you able to meet Joy's ex-husband?
No.
Yeah.
No.
I have to imagine he's pretty thrilled that you're playing him. Yeah.
Joy, I spoke to probably for dozens of hours on the telephone, and I just would ask her a million questions. And there was so that's how I got to all these crazy questions about the 900 number and everything to make it original. And Annie Mumolo is a great writer who I respect. I love her pictures, and she's great. And she had written a draft, but it was a very different picture. And I just always am going to come in and have to do it from the ground up. And I'm very grateful to her for being so respectful of that. And I took over from where she left off. We didn't meet Joy until Robert De Niro insisted that we meet the actual Rudy. And Robert De Niro gives such a generous, kind performance as a very flawed, loving father. Without him, it's not possible. The whole venture never happens. The story never happens. Yet, he also becomes the greatest impediment to it. All of it's true. So that's what happens in life. It's like some crazy fairy tale. The dwarf that shows you where the secret is then becomes the dwarf who's trying to kill you, in the same, Grimm's fairy tale, It's like some ancient archetypal storytelling thing. But I thought that dwarf was my friend. No, that dwarf's your enemy. So that's just basic storytelling. And so that's what happened in her life. And Robert was such a generous performer to become this man who was loving, yet flawed, and also willing to play the guy who his daughter was going to step over. I love that Jennifer, for the first half of the movie, is speaking to men in their places. She's in their places, in their worlds, talking across their desks at QVC and in the office in the garage. And at the end of the movie, they're talking to her across her desk, or they're waiting to talk to her. And that was very powerful. I get chills even when I say it now. That just moves me, that happened to her in real life, that power. And she held it graciously and forgivingly. Mm-hmm. And that's just who she was born as. And that's what's inspiring to me. That the real Joy is a very inspirational person who is very tolerant and has these people working for her who betrayed her and sued her. What happens in any family? So what's going to happen? I've heard so many families where that's happened. In a business, so she still remained loving and loyal to them. And in the meeting, when we had the meeting, the real Rudy says right in front of Joy, he says, "When I invented the mop," and he starts going on. This 80-year-old man, and me and Jennifer and Bob look at Joy, who's sitting there. We want to see what she's going to do, right? This is like reality TV here, We expect her to get up and scream at him like on Jerry Springer, And instead, she truly is like the godmother. She's like she just sits there like this, completely doesn't betray one emotion. She doesn't need to. That kind of a boss is inspiring to me. Yeah. She's confident in her power. She lets her father have his thing. She doesn't care. She knows who the boss is. She knows the truth, and she lets him tell the story. She doesn't even make a face or anything. She just looks at him. We were like, wow. She's a quietly... in private, she's a quietly powerful person. On air, she's very colorful. But anyway.
She is the unanxious presence in the room. Yes. Yeah.
These are lessons that I like. I write things that inspire me. So those are all words that inspire me. And then these people can be my heroes then.
And for the actors, was there a particular scene that, was your favorite, or maybe one that... I don't want to say difficult, but was more challenging than the others. I know you filmed in Boston when there was record snowfall. That alone, I have to imagine, was difficult.
I don't remember a scene being harder than any other, but I will say that the scene after the funeral that Jennifer and Mr. De Niro and I shot, that might have happened at like 3 a.m. And so we were really, we'd in a way you're like down the rabbit hole. For them it had been a long day. Maybe it was my only scene that day, but to be up that late, and it sort of created this real sense of vulnerability with each other in a quiet. And I just remember David being in the corner, because he's always very close to the lens, and he's always right there with you. You feel him, you hear him. You can hear him and you can feel everything that he's doing, and sometimes he'll even talk to you. And he's right there quietly sort of encouraging the scene to just get quieter and quieter and more grounded. And that was not a challenging scene, it was a magical moment. That was probably one of the greatest in making the movie.
This was the hardest job I've ever done.
Really?
Yes. And it was so extraordinary. But when I'm asked, was it difficult? Did you struggle? I'm like, oh man, I'm working on a David O. Russell film. How dare I say that it was a struggle? It was difficult. It was a great privilege. Mm-hmm. And I would give my blood to be on that set. And so would probably everyone in this room, because we're all SAG, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say that it was so hard for me. It was really a struggle. You know, it was you were willing to do whatever you could do because the bar is up here. He sets it high, and so does Jennifer, and so does De Niro. And so you've got to come up to your best and beyond what you ever thought you were capable of doing. You have to, because you're called upon to be there and to be present and to bring all of your training, your experience. Try and be brave when you're scared to death. But if you get that chance, whether it's with David or on your first commercial where you're serving coffee at McDonald's to get your, you know, to be an extra or to get your SAG card, of course you're gonna do it. You're gonna like probably make a roadmap of your character's life when you're doing that commercial when you first start. You know, but as you go on and you get this chance and you get picked and you get to do it, oh man, it didn't matter how I couldn't sleep. It didn't matter that I was tired and my feet were frozen, you know, because once we were there, it was so exciting. And I would leave sometimes in tears because I thought I was terrible. But I knew that's an actor's head trip because David, I knew that he would never let me leave the set unless it was perfect. And even if I didn't feel that way, I knew it was that way because he said that's a wrap. So what a great job, right? A great movie to work on.
And you're a perfect example of how actors' feedback helps shape a character. Because before we were doing this is a great story. At the table read, I told her the character was a little like Blanche Dubois, fragile character. So she does the whole table read like Blanche Dubois. And everybody else is just reading it, like De Niro's just reading it, Jennifer's, and and halfway through it, I go, hey, you know, maybe just not do the Blanche Dubois thing. You know, just,
It's like,
just read it. She keeps doing the Blanche Dubois thing. And I'm like, oh my God, why? And so afterwards, I go, let's sit down and talk. And we sit down and talk, and through the conversation, it comes out that, you know what? I come out with this from her, talking about the character, trying to wrap her head around it. I go, I understand. Terry can't just be watching a soap opera in her room. Terry has to live a soap opera in her room with her plumbing that her daughter's always fixing and the man who comes into the room to fix the plumbing.
The son.
And that's a local actor named Jimmy Jean-Louis. He was a great Haitian actor, you know, very handsome. All the ladies liked him on the set. And,
he was good for morale.
What are you talking about? You have Edgar there.
Edgar's
he wasn't there that day.
But I'm just saying. So that was a beautiful thing. So I should.
Could we maybe? I know you've never done a sequel, but I would love to see what happens with Toussaint. if you're gonna follow again.
That is a good example of things that happened with all of the characters in this movie, as David goes from our one Bible script to continually create our characters, to continue to build our characters and our dialogue every single day. So sometimes you'd come to set and there'd be all new pages. Well, oh, how exciting. And I just was in a constant state of terror. And I was like, what? And because I felt like I was kind of the newbie on the set. But he built that, like, you know, creating the thing with Toussaint, who's just sort of there and is probably one of the luckiest actors on earth because suddenly he was working for weeks for David. And then I think Jennifer one day was like, is she having a love affair now with Toussaint? And I was like, I guess so, I don't know. And so it was kind of like a running joke, but it became this really fun, that was probably the most fun part for me, was when all of a sudden Terry had, you know, someone that she had a crush on. Yes, and her own soap opera.
Yes. Did you guys want to add anything, or?
Sorry?
Did you want to add anything, or?
Oh,
Your favorite scene, or if it was hard to shoot in the snow.
I don't.
Maybe the four
David
questions. What about the four
reminds me-
questions?
Yes, the four
No,
questions.
hold on. She's saying
My
something.
four questions.
I remind you of who?
There were, you work, you know, one of the wonderful thing of being an actor is that you work with different directors and they direct differently. And David works very differently than other directors, and it's fascinating, you know, to see how they can get to the result of acting or putting a film together in so many different ways. And David talks to you while you're saying your dialogue. And I thought, oh my God, there's going to be so much looping, but there wasn't any. So I thought, he's really there's more method to it than you speak in between when we're speaking. But you know, I grew up in Italy, and my father was a filmmaker, and Federico Fellini started to work with my dad. And Fellini did very similar work than David. He also played the part, and he asked actors to repeat after him. So at the beginning, it was like, oh, well, this is new. And then I felt totally at home, because that's what I saw when I grew up, when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Time I said, when you called me and you asked me, I said, no, you say the line first. And then I repeat it. And after a while, you own it, but you understand the rhythm. And in the rhythm, there is emotions. I don't know, it's something, yes, isn't it? Yeah.
I remember in the scene where when Joe and Tony are fighting, I'm waking up, I'm caught on my forehead, and it's the divorce. I mean, right after that, it's over, and that was a very energetic scene. You know, I mean, I remember everything. Like, I mean, it was on set as it felt in the scene. Everything was moving. Everything was morphing and changing. You know, when David was going from this side to this side, and the camera everywhere, and the kids were crying, and then the kids were crying, and then Jennifer felt miserable because the kid was crying for real, and that, I mean, there was a lot of things going on. And then David was throwing things at us, right? And then, dude, say that. Okay, now you're very angry. Now you're screaming Spanish to her. And now, okay, now screaming Spanish to him. I don't know Spanish. Don't worry. Go ahead. Anything you know. Edgar, tell her what to do. And then, okay, you're very pissed. You're very angry. You're very angry. Edgar, cry. I said, what? Cry. On cue? Cry now. I said, okay, but give me what? No, now. I can't. Fake it. What? Fake it. Look at me. I feel so bad. And they look at me, I can fake it. Oh, you're gonna feel so bad if you're going away and we're getting divorced. And then I looked at him like, oh, and then I started to cry right there. And then pray and cry. And then I started doing it, and I started to cry for real. So it was like I opened the faucet and I started to cry and cry. I couldn't stop. And then that afternoon I went home, still shaking. I'm shaking now. And I sent a text to David, you remember that. I said, you taught me that day a type of freedom as an actor that I didn't know that was possible. Because I overcame the head trip and this stupid, this ghost, this haunting feeling of being perfect and being constantly judged. It's like nobody's judging you. Just do it. Cry. Look, I'm crying. And there was from that day on. I mean, the process is it's beautiful because it's so free and so open. And the thing is that David, he invites you. He takes your hand and he said, "Let's jump off this cliff together." And then you start the free fall. And it's like going. It's like falling into the dopest kaleidoscope that you can ever imagine. But he's falling with you. But at the same time, he's your safety net. He's down there, ready to catch you. And that is beautiful, and I love you, and it's great. And that's very rare, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you. I completely forgot that story, but I do know that if I pretend to cry, I can make myself cry. And that's
exactly. That's what you said.
Useful.
That's what you said.
It's very useful.
And then I started to do it, and I started to cry for real.
Yeah, it's very cathartic, too. He made me think of one other thing, but I forgot it already. Oh, the soap people. They do 100 scenes a day. I didn't know this. Yeah. So they're like professional football players. You know, like Susan Lucci and Donna Mills, like they're just like wild animals. They just go. Do you understand 100 pages a day? That's crazy. Susan Lucci told me she would rehearse a fight scene for 9 hours and get one take. That's soap operas. So those guys are on set. I shot all this great stuff with the soap opera guys, and I would say to them, and they totally dialed into this thing. And thank you for trusting me. It's a great gift to me and to the film, and it means everything to me. That your trust and your friendship means everything to me. And I would say, do this to Donna Mills and Susan Lucci, and they would never turn around and say how, why. They just, including having a cat fight. You know, most actors would go, wait a minute, where's the stunt coordinator? They had done a million cat fights. They immediately threw themselves into a cat fight that was like really good. You know, anyway, it's just very athletic, yeah.
I know that we're almost out of time, but I would be remiss because it is Diane's birthday. Yes. And you all love to perform, and I think we should sing her happy birthday. Yay. Perhaps led by Edgar, since he's the singer. Because when else are you going to get that chance? Start us off.
This is the third time that I have to sing today. By request. Okay, so yeah, you'll do it. No, let's go. So okay. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Diane. Happy birthday to you.
And many more.
And thank you.
Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you for being so generous as to share your birthday with us. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Thank you guys for being a great audience.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jenelle.